Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is Asa Morris, and this, once again, as always, is Weird Week. Thank you so much for joining us, whether again or for the first time. I've noticed our sub numbers growing, not a lot. We're still an incredibly small channel, but a few subs here, a few subs there. It makes me feel good. And the occasional comments from y'all expressing your appreciation for the show, I'll tell you, they really come at just the right moment. So thank you for that as well. I really appreciate it. Anyway, make sure you hit up the link tree in the show description. All the links, all the things, merch, socials, Patreon. I feel like there was more. There's probably more. I don't know. Check out the link tree. There's probably more. Oh, the podcast. That one, it's not really a gag. I don't know how else to show you the podcast. This week's episode centers around the British hacker and UFO enthusiast Gary McKinnon, his legal battles, and some of the pretty weird stuff he claims to have found. So make sure you check that out. Give it a sub. Like usual, it's a great episode. Like I said, everything's in the link tree. Make sure you hit it up. Also, make sure you do the big 5. I'm going to try to do this right. Like, I have to watch the screen to be able to do this. Comment, sub, bell, share. We'll see in post if that worked. And let's get down to business because, folks, on Sunday, we started off the week with a cool little UAP sighting over in Christchurch, New Zealand.
It's in that cloud. What is that?
It's a star.
No, when it's daytime,
Yeah.
there's no stars out. The sun hasn't even set
Yeah.
to our right.
It is white, it's moving.
Southern,
But I'm shaking from the phone. I just want to get a stable shot.
it's part of the southern star. That's one of the brightest stars.
No, Craig, there's
moving.
no stars out.
No,
It's not even night.
The cloud's moving.
No, the cloud's moving underneath it, yeah. I think it's above that cloud.
Real.
Interesting.
What do you call it? Satellite. Yeah.
No, satellites are just a point of light that you see at night, and it would just cross in a steady line. No change in trajectory, it just keep going one straight line.
It's a star, the guy says. You gotta rationalize. That's just how it goes. I do love how frustrated the guy filming gets with his friend, though. Also on Sunday, we got this little piece of fear-mongering from the Daily Mail. Alien contact could result in the end of all life on Earth, and we should stop trying to communicate with extraterrestrials, top physicist warns. Basically, in the article, this fella says if we go making ourselves known, we are opening ourselves up to danger, which, yes, is possible, but seems unlikely considering that we apparently are already known. You've heard the argument, the dark force theory, as one of the explanations of the Fermi paradox, but given the slow drip disclosure we all have to deal with right now, that doesn't seem to be what is happening. Honestly, like I said last week, this isn't fucking Mars attacks. On Monday, hardline skeptic Mick West continued his quest to blatantly ignore statements and facts that he finds inconvenient. On Twitter, he posted this. 2 pilots see the same UFO. One says the encounter lasted 10 seconds, a high-G dogfight. The other says it lasted nearly 5 minutes with an easy descent. UFO Twitter, is this not an important difference to resolve? To which he met a lot of criticism and pushback. One response, notably, came from one of the 2 pilots involved, Alex Dietrich, who said, "The encounter was several minutes, Mick. The carrier strike group is an integrated system. We are all on the same team. Vectors from Princeton radar to merge and visual with F-18s, all the same incident." This led to Mick continuing to try to piss in everyone else's diapers throughout the week. I'll be honest, it got boring. I just kind of stopped paying attention to it. It was kind of sad. Also on Monday, also on Twitter, Christopher Mellon posted this. "Here are the most important lines of questioning that I recommend members of Congress pursue in their efforts to get to the bottom of the UAP issue. Shouldn't the skeptics that are acting in good faith want answers to these questions as well?" Which contained a blog post with the questions, and they're pretty valid ones. Most boil down to Mellon demanding the government explain itself and its history of lying, but at the end of the list, I was surprised to see Paul Benowitz's story. which I plan on covering on the podcast later this season. I just did not expect to see his name pop up. I guess I just assume viewers of this show are familiar with Benowitz. If you're not, it'll be on the podcast later this season. On Tuesday, the Washington Examiner ran an article titled, "Ex-Government Chief for UFO Investigations, U.S. Considering Extraterrestrial Hypothesis." The article is, of course, about Lou Elizondo, who states both within the article and literally everywhere else that the government has and continues to leave the extraterrestrial option on the table. To me, the wording of the headline, as in many pieces these days, seems to make the effort to validate the idea of otherworldly life to the average American, many of which are still actively denying the possibility. Lou has said in the past that disclosure is slow, don't expect big news right away, and he's right. It will be slow if it continues. But I suspect articles like these, or news stories as we will see later, are serving as a deliberate primer for, again, the average American steak and potatoes citizen. Not for fans of this show. We're all screaming and pounding at the doors. Tell us the truth, you sons of bitches! Tell us about the hidden interdimensional progenitor race! I'm kidding. Wednesday was a surprisingly big day. We all woke up to the news that the House Intelligence Committee was being briefed on the upcoming report, prior to Congress being briefed a few days after this episode comes out. While, to my knowledge, nothing has been leaked from the briefing, a few reactions were given, which leads me to think that I was right to believe that we are going to be underwhelmed. Under another fear-mongering title, this time from the New York Post, a number of representatives gave their reactions to the hearing. Rep. Sean Patrick Maloney of New York said, "We take the issue of unexplained aerial phenomenon seriously to the extent that we're dealing with the safety and security of U.S. military personnel or the national security interests of the United States, so we want to know what we're dealing with." Rep. Val Demings of Florida said, "You know, it's always about our safety and security. Our national security is priority number one, and so that's really the area where we really focused on this morning." Rep. Adam Schiff, perhaps with the least xenophobic response, said, "It was an interesting briefing. I did learn things that were certainly new to me, but I think I'm going to leave it at that." Representative Mike Quigley of Illinois noted that the report won't have all the answers and that some things remain unexplainable. And then added, "If I had to predict how the public will react to this, one word would be disappointing." I wasn't sure what he meant by that. As in, we would react disappointingly, or we would be disappointed. The sentence doesn't really make sense. I did reach out to Representative Quigley for clarification, but he's not responded. To really nail it down though, Representative Peter Welch from Vermont said, "I'm not on the edge of my seat." Not looking great as far as clarity goes, but we kind of expected that. Thursday was the birthday of a personal hero of mine, and of many people within this field, the late, great Art Bell. Art, if you don't know, was the longtime host of Coast to Coast AM, Dreamland, and a few others, and really opened the door for the world of long-form paranormal broadcasting and later podcasting. Always respectful of guests and subject matter, always a little skeptical, always entertaining. There has never been, and there likely never will, be anyone better. We miss you, Art. Happy birthday. On Friday, an EVP video popped up that I somehow hadn't seen before. I fall into a lot of late night YouTube holes, I think we all do, wherein a girl apparently says, "Leave me alone." Here's the video.
You can see all the little toys around. Got some interesting dolls and artwork in this room.
I'm not super sure about this one. The lead investigator says that he didn't hear it when he was in the room, but the EVP clearly has an ambient echo which seems consistent with the building they're in, indicating It must have been clearly audible. Also, at the beginning of the video, you can clearly hear people moving around the same building. There's someone else in there. So, Earlier in the week, we were talking about the slow drip disclosure and the media's role in that. Well, on Saturday, NBC News on Peacock ran a segment titled, "We Might Not Be Alone in the Universe." The segment didn't really cover any new ground. It brought Oumuamua back into the conversation, which I thought was kind of a weird choice. But it definitely felt similar to the Washington Post article and the idea of normalizing otherworldly life to the average American citizen. Here are just a few quick clips from that show.
Here, among this kind of sky, it's impossible not to look up and wonder whether we're alone in the universe. And while that question might seem totally natural out here in the desert, it gets a little bit more complicated back in civilization, among scientists, among governments, and even us, the media, as we saw from the moment we spotted our first interstellar object hurtling by us from a galaxy far away.
See that one thing that's not a streak? That's Oumuamua. Loeb says the data shows its shape is way longer than it is wide and more extreme than any other comet or asteroid we've ever seen. It's also way brighter, reflecting 10 times the amount of sunlight than typical for comets or asteroids. But the biggest head scratcher for Loeb? Oumuamua's trajectory. It deviated slightly from its projected path around the sun and accelerated away, almost like it got an extra push. Comets do that, but they leave behind a tail of gas. No tail was seen with Oumuamua.
Each of them is a low probability anomaly. You would say, okay, maybe 1% of all the objects has that anomaly. Then you take 1% times 1% times 1, 6 times 1% gives you a tiny probability. And that's the first object that we saw is an object that should be as rare as 1 in a trillion.
So you're basically saying this is like somebody got struck by lightning, then got attacked by a shark, then got attacked by a bear, then ended up winning the lottery, and all those things happened to that same person.
Yes, exactly, and it's the first person you meet.
The second that you say extraterrestrial, you lose more than half of the scientific room.
I don't care about that. I am guided by evidence, and if someone comes and says, you know, I have potential evidence that we are not alone, they say, no. You should bring me extraordinary evidence, like bring me an alien that would speak to me. Look, the evidence is anomalous. Let's start the discussion. You know, if you don't open your mind to the possibilities, you will never discover them.
So, another video to show to the skeptics you may know. Actually, I worry that skeptic isn't quite the right word here. Skeptic sort of implies an active, logical processing going on. But that's not necessarily the deal with the average American, is it? It's just brick walling the subject. Denial. Fingers in the ears. Na sort of attitude. You know what I mean. Anyway, paranormal goofy shit. That is now apparently the title, because in my brain and in these scripts, that's just how I think of it. This week, we got another Squatch variation. A lot of goofy Squatches lately. Should I just call the segment Goofy Squatch? No. This week, from Redditor Block 8 Industries, a perfect depiction of a Pacific Northwest Sasquatch. Like he just climbed out of an REI catalog. A beauty, Block 8. Well done. Anyway, that's our week. If you see something throughout the week that you would like me to cover a little bit more in depth, either here or on the podcast or, I don't know, anywhere, you want me to angrily tweet about it, let me know. Hit me up on any of the socials or directly at lowstrangeness@gmail.com. If you like my voice but not my face, make sure you check out our podcast, Low Strangeness. It's available anywhere the podcasts are. There are links in the show description under our link tree. This week, great episode about Gary McKinnon. I'm sure you'll love it. I'm pretty sure you'll love it. You might like it. Either way, you should definitely sub and tell your friends to sub. And your mom. Moms love me. Also, make sure you check out my friends, The Graveyard Goons, a paranormal-themed prank call show which just gets wild. They are great folks. Give them a sub. Sometimes they'll even take numbers to call from you. Not that I condone revenge or antagonization, but anyway, once again, I am Asa Morris. This has been Weird Week. Thank you so much for joining us, whether again or for the first time. Don't forget to like, comment, sub, bell, share, and Anything else, I guess? Hit up the link tree for links to all of our stuff, including the Patreon, especially the Patreon. Take care of yourselves and the people around you, and I'll see you next week when I'm sure I'll say,